Hello everyone, welcome to Stock Team, the Investors Channel. On this episode, we'll be talking about another IPO that is now being rumored to be planned for next year. I'm talking about 2026, which is the planned IPO of Ripple, the company, the cryptocurrency company behind XRP, which is actually a crypto token that is used to make faster payments cheaper, easier, and even perhaps the most cheapest way for anyone to send money to anyone anywhere in the world. So on this episode, we'll be looking at this IPO. What exactly should you expect as a long-term or growth investor? Is this actually going to happen? If this happen, what is the best valuation, and how should you actually plan your way? Perhaps in case you want to get involved, investing in this company. There's a whole lot of, shady, not necessarily negative, but a whole lot of unclear terms in terms of the valuation, in terms of how the company works, and what exactly is Ripple, what exactly is XRP. We'll be looking at that. And of course, we'll be getting into it, but every information shared is for information and education purpose only. Do your due diligence or consult your financial advisor for further guidance. Let's get into it. Yeah, and of course, if you're just joining us for the first time, this episode is brought to you and presented by StockAtim.com, the website for retail investors to get coaching, guidance, analysis, and stock picks on how to build long-term and sustainable portfolio. So, Ripple, the name actually sparks, a war of comments, but apart from the price of the XRP token, the charts, a whole lot of people seems to have made money on this crypto token. But let's talk about the business. Rumors of Ripple IPO is actually getting very, very loud as we end the year. With about 50 billion in valuation. Is this necessarily the exit for hold investors or insiders in this company? Is this the best of maybe another MasterCard or Visa in the making? Today, what I'm going to be doing is to actually break down the fair value, the threat to Ripple's business, perhaps AI, and whether Ripple actually has, a competitive moat to actually withstand the change, the changing landscape of payments, artificial intelligence. Is Ripple having that ability to become the moat, perhaps the most preferred way to make payments in the age of AI? So let's actually look at the pros and cons for this business. First and foremost, the balance sheet of Ripple. Ripple is not necessarily your typical company that actually burns a lot of cash. So it's not the typical larger than life tech startup that burns a lot of cash. Ripple actually sits on a massive war chest of XRP token, which is the payment token that works on the Ripple network. So basically, Ripple or RippleNet is actually the network, the currency or the token that is used to actually exchange value or exchange payments is actually XRP. So they are not necessarily the same thing, but Ripple is the mother or the network or the blockchain, while XRP is actually the currency on that network. So let's actually make that clear. So Ripple itself, the company, sits on that huge war chest. They own the majority of this token, which to an extent is a double-edged sword. So the pros, for instance, is this company has been in the trenches. They've had a whole lot of lawsuits with the SEC, which is the U.S. Security and Exchange Commission. So Ripple really has come out victorious in that long-term lawsuits that was actually carried out, and Ripple actually came out to be vetted at least. Perhaps they have a regulatory coven. Institution, another thing is, apart from regulatory clarity, that Ripple is now not necessarily given an official stamp. Institutions are also using Ripple. They are not necessarily just seeing Ripple as just one of these, token that is going to go bust. As a matter of fact, about 300 companies mostly financial institutions are actually using the Ripple network to actually facilitate payments and transactions. The third aspect in terms of the pros is massive liquidity. Ripple well capitalized, and they can actually even acquire other companies. Yes, you heard me right. So Ripple doesn't necessarily need to have answers or even perhaps want to compete with other companies, but they can even use the war chest they have, perhaps the Ripple liquidity, to actually even do much more acquisition. However, the story is not that of a very, very larger than life story that doesn't have its snacks. So let's look at the cons. For instance, the Ripple network and the Ripple as a company itself, they own the largest chunk of the XRP token. So if they go public, how will the market actually value this token? If you look at it, for instance, this company owns the XRP token, they own the Ripple network. The majority of this token on the network belongs to them. Is this something that doesn't really hold water in terms of how you value a company? Having its own token, will this token actually become worthless if this company doesn't turn out profit on time? If this company gets a whole lot of competition like stable coins, I'm going to talk about it because Ripple already actually has a launch of its own Ripple USD, which basically XRP Ripple USD, that actually allows it to compete with the likes of Theta, with the likes of USDC, which also shows that Ripple is open to competing very, very strongly. So the XRP token is not necessarily a big disadvantage, but if the company is able to actually reinvent itself and also even make sure the Ripple USD is used largely, they can actually withstand that competition. Also, centralization risk. A lot of critics have actually argued that Ripple depends too much on Ripple Labs, which is actually a huge red flag. So the fact that this company owns so much of its own token, that level of centralization is really, really perhaps a red flag for a whole lot of people. So now, before we get into the valuation, I just want to say something very, very clearly. This video is brought to you by stockandem.com. Like I said, you actually see so much news in finance, in business, and you want to actually invest. You see so many data points, from inflation to GDP to the price of gold, price of crude oil, the S&P 500, the Nasdaq 100. You see so many things that actually confuse you as a retail investor. What we do on stockacademy.com is to break this down, show you the implication of how this affects you. So if you have any need to get much more information on how you can get yourself more educated, coaching, guidance, you can go to stockandem.com today and get yourself a membership, very, very affordable, and we can actually partner with you to see how we can give you all the guidance that you need. We have the daily brief that actually goes out to all members that gives clarity on what the market is doing, retail investor perspective to IPOs, to a whole lot of growth stocks, and now you can position yourself and become a smarter investor. So I'll go higher from that, and let's look at the valuation of Ripple. Now, Ripple is worth about 50 billion according to private market valuation. For us to actually find a fair value, we have to look at two things. One, the software revenue. Secondly, the XRP holdings that the company actually has, the XRP token that they have, the huge cash tranche of the token. The software, a whole lot of market insiders and participants actually see Ripple as a software as a service platform for banks. So if we compare them to the likes of Stripe or RDN, perhaps about 15 to 20 billion would be the best valuation, especially if you are looking at Ripple as a software company. From the XRP token that they have, the holdings that they have, Ripple holds, they have billions of it in escrow, which is a positive and it's also a negative. So with the current value of $1.85, that's tens of billions in assets. And for me, I actually see this as perhaps we can value Ripple between 35 to 40 billion, and the 50 billion is actually about 10 billion, overestimated or overhyped. And for me, as a long-term investor, I don't want to overvalue a company, because if you do that, you actually get trapped. And I mean it, because if this company actually IPO at a particular valuation that is far above what this company is actually worth, this is actually going to crash further down. Sometimes some of these companies crash to about 70%, 60%, sometimes even 80% before they actually get to a fair value. So you don't want to overvalue a company, and you don't also want to rush into buying the stocks. The second thing, perhaps, does this company actually have a competitive moat? So the competitive moat is basically what this company has to protect itself against any competition. What actually makes it stands out? So we have the SWIFT network that is well entrenched in the financial market, is well entrenched in the global payment system. The SWIFT system has upgraded to ISO 200-22. They are not going down without a fight. We have several stable coins coming up. We have USDC, we have Theta, which is USDT, we have PayPal USD, we have so many other tech giants, so many other crypto giants coming up with their own stable coin. Ripple USD is a new entrant, not longer than 2 years ago. We haven't seen massive adoption of this stable coin. Does Ripple actually have what it takes to actually compete? It's yet to be seen. JP Morgan moves so much money across the world. They now have JPM coin, which is already handling billions of payment settlement in-house. If JPM or JP Morgan goes to the market and maybe they spin off this business as a standalone business, a whole lot of institution, we actually perhaps see JPM as a better competitor to the likes of Ripple USD, to the likes of stable, USDC or USDT. So, if we actually want to say, from a competition point of view, perhaps maybe Ripple just needs to actually make sure they're a bit more aggressive, they're a bit perhaps more innovative. Now, the last aspect I actually want to look at, can Ripple actually become perhaps one of the most preferred payment rail in the age of AI? So as AI becomes more embedded beyond charts into the daily life of an average person that transacts business, that sends money anywhere in the world, different things that people do, merchants and all that, you actually want to see a company that can execute and become one of the most preferred. So for instance, if you look at the ride-hailing business, when ride-hailing actually gets into autonomous driving, when robotaxi becomes one of the most preferred way to move around, Uber, for instance, not exactly the same competitor, Uber has what it takes to become perhaps the most preferred rail, which is you want to order anything, to go from one place to another, Uber becomes perhaps one of the most preferred way you can get around. Does SRP has that ability to become one of the most preferred way for people to actually make payments embedded in AI beyond charts, to actually complete, receive payments or accept payments or actually move money around in the age of AI? It is yet to be seen. We have Solana, we have Ethereum L2. Many of these platforms actually have the program, capacity. They have that easier way of being embedded in AI workflows, in AI payment systems that can actually be more embedded for customers, that they are far better and easier to use. So as a retail investor, should you participate in this IPO? Perhaps you want to wait for post lockup, which is the period when old investors are allowed to sell their shares, you actually perhaps want to actually wait it out. The 50 billion valuation, if this IPO actually happens, might actually be an overkill. Like I said, between 35 to 40 billion might actually be a fair value from a tech point of view. And perhaps if you're a growth investor, it might actually be a safe bet if the global payment system or financial system is going to be overall. So that's all I have to say about this. That's my perspective. As a retail investor myself at StockTeam.com, we don't necessarily chase hype. We don't necessarily chase what exactly is becoming is actually trending or hype or becoming the hype. Yes, AI might actually be a hype for so many people, but AI has produced value. AI has produced perhaps the most radical way for us to actually live, to do business, to live, to enjoy, and to actually do everything. But as Ripple shown that they can provide the most revolutionary way to make payments irrespective of the age of technology that we are, it is yet to be seen. This IPO, if it happens, it might actually be put to test. The execution of the business, how the business actually performs, and how the global markets, global financial institutions actually, use their technology, the Ripple Net, for instance, the Ripple USD, how this company is able to execute will actually tell the future of this IPO or the stock when it finally becomes, public. Thank you so much for watching this episode on the Ripple IPO, which is still in the rumor stage, but the company hasn't necessarily said yes, but this might actually happen next year. If you have watched and enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, put on the notification bell so that you don't miss next episode. And of course, this episode has been brought to you by StockTeam.com, the website for retail investors to get coaching, analysis, and stock picks to build a sustainable and long-term portfolio. Till next time, and perhaps the next video, take care and bye-bye.